So today we're talking about emotions. What are emotions?
I'm glad you asked that question. Emotions. Um, well, we have so many different words for emotions, and we seem to interchange them all the time. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain the differences between emotions, feelings, which we sometimes interchange that term, and moods, and we sometimes interchange that term too. So emotions are actually really uh, reactionary and really short. Um, so if you're kind of following a more strict definition of what an emotion is, it's a reaction to some kind of an event that causes that can actually turn into a feeling. So let's say you're startled by something and it's actually something that frightens you and you're feeling scared. That initial reaction, you don't have any control over it, you just feel it, and that would be the emotion. Now emotions are there's no actual consensus on how many different kinds of emotions people have. Some people think there's only 4 or 5 different ones, and some people think there's like 10,000. So it really depends on your perspective. Feelings are when you take that reaction and your mind adds some meaning to it. So a feeling can actually be longer than an emotion. So an emotion can be really fast, really reactionary, and quite, it might only last 90 seconds. Whereas a feeling can be, okay, well, what does this mean? Uh, what caused this? It's like now what you're doing is you're putting some of your experience into it and maybe some of your memories, and you're starting to enhance what that emotion actually means to you. So you're putting some thinking into that. And a mood, depending on what definition you have of a mood might not actually arise from any kind of an event, an actual event, although it could be triggered by a memory. But it's a mood is not necessarily something that is based on a reaction to some kind of an event that's happening. So a mood can happen, and it can be prolonged. It could last for hours, it might last for days, it could even last for weeks. And sometimes you don't know what it is that made that mood occur in the first place. So they're quite different from each other when you really look at it, and it's good to understand that there are differences because it helps us to learn how to deal with them differently when we know what it is we're actually dealing with.
Why do we have emotions?
Well, the dictionary definition or the psychological definition is that it provides us survival. It has like a survival role for us. However, for me, personally, and with a lot of people, I think emotions are what make us human beings and allow us to actually enjoy and experience our lives. And also, in a lot of cases, they connect us to each other because when we have an emotional experience and someone else has a similar one, it can bring us closer together. So it's a connecting social thing at the same time. Um, and when you look at specific kinds of emotions, they can tell us different things. So if we feel a feeling of love and attachment to somebody and it's really strong, that's telling us that that person is really important and significant in our life. And that's really important for us to know. And then the other side of that is when we lose somebody like that, we might experience loss, sadness, etc. So there's also a thing called an emotion wheel, and it kind of shows the positive and then the negative emotion. So another emotion is happiness. Happiness is the purpose of happiness is it's telling us that this is something, whatever it is that's making us feel that emotion, is something that is good for us. So it's really important for us to know that as human beings as well. Now, the opposite of happiness can be fear. Fear can be telling us that something's going to hurt us, harm us, or is hurting or harming us or someone else that we're worried about. So, depending on the actual emotion, it's going to have a different kind of a purpose. And at one time, I used to think I was a slave to my emotions. I used to think that I was overly emotional. I used to think that that emotions were a negative thing, and that I wanted to avoid any kind of emotion that was really intense unless it was an emotion that I enjoyed, like joy or happiness, or if I was laughing, things like that. Those were the only kinds of emotions I liked, and I really didn't like the other emotions, anger, sadness, etc., because I didn't like the experience of them. So that's one thing about emotions is sometimes we look at them as these things that happen, but we have no control over them, and that there's good ones and bad ones. But when you see what the purpose of a lot of our emotions are, that they actually all serve a purpose that we need as human beings, then sometimes we can look at them differently, and then also look at, okay, well, if that's something that I'm going to experience anyway, how do I deal with maybe those uncomfortable emotions that are going to happen?
We often hear people say that we need to learn how to handle our emotions. Why is it important to handle those emotions or to cope with them as opposed to just suppressing them or trying to make them go away?
Well, that's a really good question, Juliana, because, that's something I've been doing probably my whole life. And I think a lot of us have been kind of taught that we need to minimize our emotions because there's such a thing as being, you're too emotional. So what you're doing is you're allowing your emotions to control, to get out of hand, to get out of control, etc. So we've been taught to suppress them, to be stoic, to be very in control, in a lot of ways really reserved. And this is really a cultural thing I find a lot of times too, is showing no reaction to certain kinds of things that really are quite upsetting. Now, when that happens, what happens is emotion is a reaction. It's also a chemical reaction within your body as well. And it's energy. That emotion is producing energy. And if it's trapped inside your body, and it is the kind of emotion that needs to be released, then what can happen is it can make you feel feel bad. It may turn into something that comes up all the time at the unexpected moments, and you don't understand where it's coming from. And it could actually even make you physically ill. And they say that a lot of things like heart attacks, for example, some of those things are the result of suppressed emotions, where individuals, maybe have some negative experiences they've gone through, but they they might have suppressed some of the emotions that came with that. So it's actually not healthy to suppress your emotions. But a lot of us do not know how to do that without feeling bad. So that's part of, I guess, emotional fitness and emotional wellness, is knowing how do I handle an uncomfortable emotion? Like, what do I do?
So when we think we're suppressing emotions, I guess we think that we're making them go away, but they tend to like build up.
Yeah, it's kind of like uh, the kettle's boiling over,
Mm-hmm.
but you're not releasing that steam. So, that's energy. It's going to build and build and build, and it's going to occasionally come out at the unexpected moments if that pressure continues to build. And it could get to the point where you explode. So maybe what's going to happen is, let's say there's something that an unresolved issue that you had at one time with somebody, maybe some kind of a major conflict you had, or maybe it was bullying. Let's say it was bullying, and then later, when you got older, maybe someone reminded you of being bullied, or maybe someone even looked like someone that had bullied you at one time. And maybe what'll happen is it'll come up, it'll surface, that
Mm-hmm.
feeling will surface. And then you might think, oh my God, I'm overreacting. And you might get really angry or feel really defensive. And then what's happening is that's called an emotional trigger. And what it is it's a feeling that's been suppressed that is trying to surface now, and something has reminded you, and now you're feeling it again.
Mm-hmm.
But because it's not associated with the original thing that you suppressed, you might not understand where it comes from. So one thing that I went through when I moved back to the ranch was I was super sensitive about anybody who was drinking,
Mm-hmm.
and it did bother me to some extent before that. Um, but when I moved back, I realized that I was hypersensitive to it. I would actually get angry if I saw someone who is intoxicated. And if someone actually spoke to me that was intoxicated, I really was irritated. I was angry with them. I wanted to get away from them. All these different kinds of things were happening. And it was really stressful, because then I wouldn't stop thinking about it afterward. And then what I realized later was I had some unresolved issues with incidents that involved intoxicated people that were really scary to me.
Yeah.
And they happened here. And as soon as I physically came back here, it was like my body remembered everything, but my mind was still trying to forget it all. But my emotions were getting triggered. And what ended up happening is I got to the point where I really thought there's something wrong with me, because I thought, how could I feel like this? Like, this doesn't make sense. And it was really disruptive. And then when I realized what it was, I was kind of scared, because I actually believed there was something wrong with me, because I thought, how could this still bother me? But then as I went on my healing journey and found out more about emotions, I just found out, hey, that's normal. A human being can only carry a negative emotion around for so long before it's going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's normal. And now what I see is if when I go through a trigger is I want to know, what do I need to work on? And now I see them as a symptom that's a clue to something that is going to help me feel better. What I did in the case of that particular incident is I started working on my feelings about that. Well, like the different things that had happened, and what can I do about it? I started going to Al-Anon, and just thinking about different kinds of things, and doing different kind of work. And I guess probably the thing that helped me the most was when I started getting therapy, and then I started really digging into some of those past things, and taking, peeling the onion, I guess, of where some of that pain and hurt and fear had come from. But it was underlying that symptom and that reaction. So it was actually telling me something really, really important. And now I see that if I have a negative emotion and I don't understand where it's coming from, then maybe there's something I need to pay attention to, and that take care of myself. Take care of myself. I see it that way now.
Yeah, one thing that helped me kind of deal with the anger that I felt towards my past and the people involved was just understanding them and the fact that they experienced a lot of trauma as well, and what they had like put their kids through was actually a bit less than what they had gone through. And just kind of like knowing that there was a reason behind those actions like made me feel a little bit better. Like they didn't choose to be who they were. It was a result of their trauma and living in an environment where it's frowned upon to be sad or to have any like non-happy emotion, essentially.
Yeah, it's just like all that work that you do when you're dealing with those things. Like once you kind of know okay, what's the root cause, and then you start really investigating that understanding. Really, it makes you, I guess, it helps you accept it,
Mm-hmm.
that it happened, and then also be really realistic that it's over now, that it's in the past, that that's where it really comes from, and that it's not something now that you're dealing with. It's something that, it's old fear and hurt from before. And then you have that distance.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I find is you need the distance. Like, I'm not saying that those are happy memories for me anymore, but I have distance now. Before, when I would talk about certain things related to the different things that were triggering me, then I would, it would be really hard for me to keep my composure. And a lot of times I would just start crying.
Yeah.
And I found that I couldn't talk about a lot of it because it was so hard for me to do that. And now I can talk about stuff like that. And I don't feel that, I'm not going to be able to hold it together when I get through this now. And I realize now, I'm just thinking, I never thought I'd be able to actually do that. Like, get to the point where I could talk about something that used to make me come to tears all the time at one time. And now I can talk about it, and I don't break down or anything now. And I was told that, that's a sign that I've really worked on it, and that, that healing's happened. So, like I said, I see it as a good thing if I have a trigger now, because then I know there's some more cleaning up I can do. And I like to do that because I feel better every time I do something like that.
Yeah. So, like, understanding helped me to cope with my past and some of my emotions. But what are some other healthy ways to cope with our emotions?
One thing I heard a lot about over the years, and I just thought, oh, it can't work that well, is journaling.
Mm-hmm.
Journaling is powerful uh, emotional processing. So the reason why journaling works so well is because you can do it regardless of whatever you're going through. Whereas sometimes if you're trying to talk about something, you're a little hesitant and it's harder to do. But it's a piece of paper and a pen or pencil, and nobody's listening to you, nobody's judging you. You can just go with it. Say whatever you want. Nobody's going to read it. So you have so much freedom to actually express exactly how you're feeling. And what ends up happening is some of that energy starts getting released. And the other thing that starts happening is you start reading what you're writing. And you're starting to get a little bit of a different perspective on it sometimes. So that's, quite powerful to have that second glance at what you went through to kind of evaluate it again. A lot of times too, when you're journaling, all kinds of different things just come out that you never remembered at the time. And they start coming out too. And then you start to have all these revelations about things that you really, maybe you've been pushing them out of your mind for a long time, maybe years. And all of a sudden they're coming out on paper and you're starting to see things differently. You're starting to remember stuff. It's starting to make more sense. It's quite powerful that way in how free flow emotion can be. The other thing I find too is a lot of times you can look at that, whatever it is that you've read, and say, what did I learn? Mm-hmm. What did I get from that experience? As bad as it was, how has that changed me and given me things that I didn't have before? So it gives you that opportunity to also look at that experience, those emotions, and how you benefited from it in the long run. And so that's a really good perspective to have. So when you're doing journaling, it's good to, not only just write down what it is that you went through, but also to reflect on it at the same time. A lot of times what happens is if you really judge yourself, you read it in your journal and you think, I did the best I could. I really did the best I could at that time. And, I'm proud of myself. I did, I persevered even though it was difficult. So it can be very therapeutic, and it's always there. Like anybody can journal. It's really good if you need to process something and you're in that, I guess, in that moment too, and you need to do it right away. It's always there handy whenever you need it. Mm-hmm. So I really like journaling.
One thing that I do, and I don't know if anyone else does it. There's probably someone out there, but like sometimes when I'm really stressed, I have a dog, and if I howl, he'll join in with me. So I'll just start howling, and then he'll howl with me, and we'll just howl for like a minute, and I just feel kind of like relieved, like I was yelling for a minute, like I just needed to get something out.
That, Juliana, that makes total sense. Because mm-hmm. when you think about it as energy,
yeah,
because everything's energy, right? Mm-hmm. And you are releasing energy because sound is energy. And it's vibration. There's energy in there. So you found a way to release energy at the same time with your pet. Mm-hmm. And, people say that when they sing or when they make music, when they produce energy, or maybe they do, I don't know, a drawing, the creative process. That's another way of releasing energy as well. And emotions are energy, right? So yeah. Some of that emotion. So what you were doing was really therapeutic as well, is you were releasing some of that energy right out of your body physically through sound. Mm-hmm. And there's a really strong spiritual connection with sound as well. It's sound is very spiritual at the same time too. So, you know, it's a really healthy way of releasing something. Like some people yell,
Yeah.
some people crying. One of my favorite ways to release emotion. Because, you know, sometimes it's just so friggin' heavy.
Yeah.
There's, you know, the tears are welling up, and it's like, you know what? Creator gave us tears for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Use them.
Yeah, our tears
Feel good.
contain
Oh,
stress hormones, so
yes.
I think that's why you feel relieved after crying. It's like
Yes.
you're
Yeah.
physically relieving yourself of some of those stress hormones.
Yep. It's really, it is powerful. Crying is powerful, and it's there all the time. And I think that's what a lot of people end up doing is they suppress those tears.
Mm-hmm.
And then what they're doing at the same time is they're holding in whatever that is. And that's usually really bad stuff if you're actually wanting to cry and you can't.
Yeah,
Um,
I held
and
that in for like years because my brothers put it into my head that crying is for like babies or it's weak. So I couldn't cry in front of people. Like I wouldn't let anyone see me cry. And
oh
people like
yeah,
expect women to be emotional, and it's like I didn't know how because I essentially kind of grew up like a guy. So it was kind of strange to have to learn how to do that. But
yeah.
now I just try to embrace that sensitive side. Like it's good to be sensitive. The world needs that. We're the compassionate and the empathetic people, you know, and we're the artists.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you know, it's healing.
Mm-hmm.
It's healing. It's a natural thing. Like everybody is able to cry. Every single baby cries.
Yeah.
And it's a totally natural thing for us to release that energy. Like we don't have any inhibitions when we're little, when we're kids.
Yeah.
So it's amazing when you watch a little kid. They'll go through all kinds of really traumatic things when they're young because everything's new to them. So some of
Mm-hmm.
that stuff is really traumatic. And yet what will happen is they will constantly release those emotions right away. And then they pick up and they go and do something totally different, like nothing ever happened, because they're doing full releases so often that they don't carry stuff
Mm-hmm.
around. So, you know, it's only when you're taught or maybe even disciplined not to release those emotions that you start having those problems. And I know that with a lot of our residential school survivors, unfortunately, they've actually been punished,
Yeah.
and so that they would not show their emotions. And that's really like a prison of emotions for a lot of people where they have to learn how to express emotions in a healthy way. And it can be really challenging because a lot of people just continue to carry that stuff inside, that energy still inside them. They feel it and it's really hard. So understanding our emotions is really important for everybody. And I think it's one of the least understood aspects of health is emotional health.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, you know, for me personally, I guess one of the things that I'm most interested in because I find it affects the quality of my life hugely. And I see a lot of stuff happening because people are, you know, going through emotional illness. I call it emotional illness rather than mental illness because I think a lot of it is based on suppression of negative emotions and the, not being able to actually go full cycle so you can start healing from some of those things that have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, there's so many people affected by it too.
Yeah, like a lot more than I ever would have thought.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I see a lot of the addiction issues are attempts to mask some of that emotional stuff that might surface.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, uh, if you're if you're focused in on whatever kind of addictive behavior, you're not going to think about it, you're not going to feel it, you're not going to experience it. And they call that self-medicating.
Yeah.
And, even when I was smoking, oh, heck, that was a real emotional masking thing, too. I remember when I started smoking, I quit smoking, I don't know how many times on and off. And every time I started, it was because of some kind of a crisis, because I needed that nicotine to numb me for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it was seconds, I still needed it. And that's part of, I guess, a lot of the addictions that we see is people are using it for a reason. It's not a good way to deal with and cope with emotions, but it's something. And when we don't know any other way, sometimes that's what we see and we end up doing it too. And a lot of times you have social connection with people when you're engaging in these addictions. So it brings people together, but it's an unhealthy thing to be doing.
Yeah, and alcohol specifically has such a it's so like socially normalized to drink alcohol that if you don't, people will almost be offended. Like when I was a teenager, I didn't really want to drink. I just didn't really have that desire. And people would get like upset. And so I just, would drink like sometimes just to have something to do because the alternative was essentially staying at home alone.
Yeah, yeah. So that's, you want that social contact.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the same time, hey, alcohol makes you feel good for a while, makes you laugh. You start to let down some of your things or your inhibitions. You start to like do stuff, talk more, you know. Um, there's a reason why people drink, but the thing is, look at all the damage that it does, right?
Yeah.
And you forget about all the important things. You get to a certain point and you totally lose control over this. You don't have judgment, those
Yeah.
kinds of things. So, it's all the negative stuff that goes with it. But there's some good feeling in there at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's really the draw. That's the whole draw behind it is I want to feel good. I want to laugh. I want to be with my friends. I want to have a good time. I want to dance. That's kind of what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
So it's if that's the only time though that you feel like that, then that's where the addiction can come from. It's like, you know what? I need to feel good again.
Mm-hmm.
I want to feel good again. I used to look forward to when I could go to the bar. I really did because I thought that was the highlight of my life. But then what I was always disappointed because something usually really bad would happen or, I was always disappointed because I never really achieved that real happiness that I was seeking when I did that. But I did at the time look forward to it because it was a little better for a while, but it never lasted.
I think that's all I have for questions.
Well, why don't you tell me, Juliana, like when you first started, you know, finding out about emotions and stuff, what did you find that was most surprising, I guess, when you started learning about emotions and those kinds of things?
I think like learning how to identify my emotions. Like, well, first of all, my therapist said that it seemed that I had difficulty explaining how I felt and like identifying my emotions. And then like that I didn't even realize was a problem of mine. So when I started like working on identifying my emotions and just looking for some kind of root cause and just asking myself like why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, like that kind of made those emotions easier to get past. Like I could find a reason. I like to find reasons for things. I always ask why for like everything that I see. I'm very curious, so that kind of helped the curious side of me.
Wow, that's great.
Hmm.
So it was like a skill then, I guess, eh?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like that. Like sometimes I don't even realize how how much I was suppressing my emotions. Like while we were talking, I remembered that like, oh, probably over 10 years ago, I had difficulty just saying how I felt or telling a person how they made me feel. And now it's so much easier. But the process is slow. So I guess like I don't often like think back to how it was like pre-therapy.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, I guess when you when you get too good at suppressing stuff, it's like a bad habit. It
Hmm.
becomes a bad habit when you don't even want to do it, then you just keep doing it.
Yeah, it's like there was some kind of switch turned off or something. And now like it wasn't like numb, but it felt like I was when I look back, it seemed like I was slowly getting towards that place of just like trying not to feel because I didn't want to feel sadness because I was like such a sensitive person. But then, talking through things, looking back, making sense of things, and just like allowing myself to feel, um, it's so much better.
Yeah, and I remember too when we were talking about like the the upside of being like that.
Hmm.
Um, in other words, the sensitivity, which I don't think necessarily it would. I think I see it as sensitivity in a good way.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes I hear the expression, "Oh, you're being overly sensitive," or
Hmm.
"You're too sensitive."
Yeah, I used to hear that a lot when I was like
Yeah,
younger.
yeah.
Hmm.
I hear it all the time now. I still hear, but well, not necessarily to me, but I hear people use that all the time still. Um, but I like, the discussion that we had before about, why is it good to be sensitive? Because I wouldn't even use that word. I would say it's good to be empathetic
Hmm.
because
Yeah,
that's
like
kind of how I see
back
what that
when
is
I
that's
kind of
the ability to
tried to like turn off my
empathize.
emotions,
Hmm.
I had felt like happiness, but I can't really remember feeling joy, like pure joy. But now, I mean, I feel joy like every so often, and it just feels like amazing. And I can't believe I didn't get the opportunity to feel that when I was a little bit younger. Like I had no idea what I was missing out on when I tried to like kind of numb myself from those feelings. Because if you try to numb yourself from pain, you're also gonna numb yourself from real happiness and real joy. It's like you gotta kind of take with the
Wow.
good with the bad.
I am so glad you said that because that's so important.
Hmm.
It's so important because it's like that wheel, right? Like when you look at those wheels, emotion wheels, you can find them on the internet. There's always like the complementary emotion or the opposite one, right?
Hmm.
And it's just like you said, if you turn it down or turn it off, you're turning off the whole wheel or the opposite side of it too. Um, it's like your low volume on life, I guess, and
Yeah, like it's kind
experience.
of muted.
Yeah, it's like from color to black and white.
Hmm.
So you got more color now.
Yeah, it's like that's how it feels too. I mean, sometimes I'm just like little things. I'll go outside and I'll feel like the warmth of the sunlight. And because I had to be isolated for 5 years to feel the sunlight now, it's just like it feels amazing, and I just love it. And I just
Oh, that's
yeah.
great.
And I think my dog kind of helped me with that too. I just see him like get so excited about little things, and he always like stops to sniff, and he's just like we take the same walk every time we go, and he's just so excited every time.
Yeah.
And I just thought, what if I tried to live like a dog for a day and just like started to notice these little things and like appreciate them? And I
Yeah, that's
did.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I really, honestly, I really think that, it's the essence of the human experience is our
Mm,
emotions and that we experience, that we go through, and you know, I would never give up love, feeling love and connection with anybody,
mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel
so that
love
I
deeper
could,
now.
I would never give that up so that I would never be sad or
Mm-hmm.
experience grief. It would just be like, you know what? They're different forms of the same thing,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah, the love I
And
feel for my dog. People might say it's he's too spoiled, but he helped me so much, and I never thought that I could love an animal this much. And just kind of learning or understanding love as it is, and not just putting that term on romance, but focusing on
exactly.
love for my family members and my friends, and just being able to say I love you to my friend, or my brothers, or someone that I'm not romantically involved with at all, and feeling like a more intense feeling of love for everyone around me too, and just kind of feeling it at all times without any like direction that I'm trying to give it into. And I think that's how love is supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, yeah, when we just let those feelings be free
Mm-hmm.
and accept them, and know that, yeah, there's going to be some negatives, but we have a way of dealing with them and letting them process. They're not something to be scared of anymore. I'm
Yeah.
not scared of emotions anymore. I'm curious about the ones that I want to work on, and I feel so much better
Yeah. And I feel
not
more.
hiding.
Yeah. I feel more, and it feels better.
Yeah, I spent a lot of my life hiding from them.
Mm-hmm.
I realize that now, is I was hiding from them, trying to forget, and then also avoiding anything that was going to trigger me. That's
Yeah.
not a way to live. It's
Mm-hmm.
really not a good way to live if you're avoiding things in life just because you don't want to experience a trigger of some kind. It's, you're tiptoeing around. There's things you don't do anymore because you can't. It's just, you feel really inhibited, and I feel so much better now. Like, I
Yeah.
really do. And I'm still going to therapy,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm still, every time I find something and I work on it and I start feeling better, I'm like, you know what? I feel so much like who I really am at the same time too.
Yeah.
I'm starting to feel like that, and I can't even remember when I felt like this before. But it's wonderful. It
Mm-hmm.
really is.
That's kind of like one of the good things about getting older. Like I'm only 32, but I've seen a lot of women say that it was in their 30s and 40s that they began to feel their best, because that's when they stopped caring about what other people think and just focused more on like themselves and their own personal growth.
Yeah, it's really, really important. It's like, when they talk about all the parts of the medicine wheel,
Mm-hmm.
I always remember that since I first heard it. I first heard about it when I was in my 20s, and that emotional one, the hardest one to learn about, and the most fulfilling one to work on.
Yeah.
And, that's why we're doing what we're doing. We're wanting to help other people just to learn a lot of the stuff that we've been learning over the years that are making us feel well and enjoy our lives more. And, it's pretty good stuff to know about for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm really looking forward to our next episode, what we're going to learn next. And I'm also looking forward to down the road when we're going to actually be able to. We do plan on co hosting together in the same room,
Yeah.
but we also want to, talk to some experts,
Mm-hmm.
talk to some therapists, talk to some healers, different people, all these helpers that we have out there who, I've gotten help from all kinds of people over the years. I know you have too.
Mm-hmm.
And explore that as well with different people because there's so many ways that we can help ourselves and there's so many people that are out there that can help us.
Yeah, I've been meeting new people who have gone on like similar journeys and have like pretty similar stories.
Yeah, and I think a lot of them too have gone through their own healing journey, so
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty amazing. Well, thanks a lot, Juliana. It's a great discussion and I feel really good.
Me too.
I have good emotions.
Okay. All right, so
uh,
I'll see you next time.
okay then,
Okay,
bye.
bye.